Hi, I'm Tall Mike Wine. You can call me Mike. Welcome to my podcast. Don't let the name fool you. It is a podcast about wine, but it's also a podcast with just people that love wine, sipping wine, talking, lots of conversation, lots of wine, lots of fun. I hope that's all right. The cell phones have been silenced. The wine poured. Get yourself some, unless you're driving. And just like that, the podcast begins. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Stone, the namesake tall guy, wine geek, your host. From the Vintners Room at Nicholson Ranch in Sonoma. Glad to have you dialed in for episode number 4. We'll be chatting with my guest in a moment. But first, a shout out to the podcast's newest hotspots for downloads, the metropolis of Sequim, Washington. Hello, Sequim. Also, Hotlanta, Georgia. Quite a few people there. Anchorage, Alaska. I dare say that we may be the most popular wine podcast in Anchorage. Oh, and there are people in Concord, New Hampshire, too. The count is now 18 states, 3 continents, 6 countries, since we had a ping from Volgograd, Russia. The reach of the podcast is so much greater than back in my radio days when you felt, this is how you felt a certain sense of victory. You got off shift. You wandered down to the local bagelry and you heard your station blaring from a radio somewhere back in the bakery. And you're like, yes, they're listening. All right. Our guest for this episode of the podcast is the president. I like to say that since I get that email that says, from the president's desk. And I think you might be my favorite president of the moment. The president of Keenan Winery on Spring Mountain, high above the Napa Valley, Michael Keenan is here. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
Now, I'm a Mike, you see. And I know this is a thing because you're always Michael. And I'm sure when people call you Mike, do you correct them?
No, but I always introduce myself as Michael, and occasionally people will ask, what do I prefer? And I tell them Michael.
Right. And I'm the exact opposite. Like I say, my name's Mike. And then if I hear them say Michael, I'm like, they want something from me. But I'm sure, but not with you, because if they call you Mike, they're just trying to be friendly, maybe.
Yeah, well, you can also tell if I'm amongst friends who's known me a long, long time, because all my old friends still call me Mike.
Really?
Yeah.
There was a time when you were just Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. When did you get serious and turn into just Michael?
Oh, when I became, famous.
The president.
Yeah. When I became a big deal.
Have you appeared on many podcasts?
A couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. How do you like it?
I like it a lot.
Okay. The great thing about podcasting, and back when I was in radio, the same thing, people can't see you. So, it's casual. You kick back. In this case, we sip a little wine. And we just chat. All right, let's get to it here. I like to break things down for anyone who's never visited wine country, okay? People that listen to this podcast could be somewhere far from California, and I was someone who got into wine in the 90s and got into restaurants and then eventually moved to the Bay Area for a job in San Francisco in a restaurant. And I'd been drinking wines from Napa, Sonoma, and then I'm here, 2004. My first weekend to do what I want to do. I'm like, let's go to Napa. Where the hell is it? All right? Because literally, if you drink wine, you know all about Napa and Sonoma. But if you don't ever really look at the map, it's just sort of this mystical, magical place. So let me describe where Michael's winery is in relation to where we are. We are in Sonoma, so we're basically straight north from San Francisco, about an hour. It's not very far. So this whole wine country thing is it's a pretty tight-knit little area. How long did it take you to drive here today?
53 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, we're not too far away. So the Napa Valley runs north and south to the east of Sonoma. And there is a mountain range in between, creating the two valleys. On one side is the Napa Valley. On the other side is the Sonoma Valley. We're in the Sonoma Valley recording this podcast on a very wet Thursday afternoon. It's Thursday, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike.
It could be any day in podcast land, right? So on the Napa side, if you go up to the town of St. Helena, which is just before you get all the way to the north end of the valley in Calistoga, and you go up into that mountain range that separates Napa and Sonoma, there is an area right there in the mountains called Spring Mountain. So it's a sub-district of the Napa Valley. And that is where you will find Keenan, the Keenan Winery. How far are you from the top?
Our upper gate is 3/4 of a mile from the county line, which is the ridge line. So
Right.
we're pretty much at the top.
Okay.
It's sort of a side-to-side winding road from our gate to the county line, and then you begin to go down into Sonoma. So
Yeah, the other side of the hill, you go down, and you're going to go down into Santa Rosa, which is the Sonoma side. It's a fun drive up from St. Helena.
yes,
If you're into that windy road, mountain driving thing, narrow 2-lane road, windy, hit the gas pedal. It's a fun drive up to Keenan.
well, and it's a little different now because the scenery has changed markedly since September.
All right, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that morning. I've got it in my notes here. It was 4 a.m., September 27th. The fire that would become known as the Glass Fire broke out. How far away from you did it start?
It was north and east of us, across the valley and up the hill. So seemingly a long way away, but the winds were coming from that direction that day. So we had it was a very dry period. We often get those northeast winds that time of year. And my son woke up at 7, which was shocking because he'd had his 30th birthday party the night before with all of his buddies, and they were all sleeping over at his place on the property.
Okay.
And when my phone rang at 7, which woke me up, I was quite surprised to see it was my son. And I knew right away something was wrong.
Or you thought, he's been up all night.
That never occurred to me. Even he doesn't do that anymore. But he told me that this fire had started and it was headed our direction. He was quite alarmed, which got me quite alarmed.
So at what point did you get there?
I did not get up there on Sunday. I live in Oakland, so
Right.
I didn't get up there that day. I thought the last thing that was needed was somebody driving up the highway through a fire, trying to get up to a place that would have to be evacuated.
Another Yahoo clogging the roads.
Exactly.
Okay.
So by around 6 p.m., I think, everyone on our property had to evacuate in a hurry, and the flames were coming across Spring Mountain Road, and it was quite frightening for everybody. And on my property, my general manager and his family live there. My cellar master and his family live there. My son lives there. Our tasting room manager lives literally through the fence on the neighboring property. Everybody had to evacuate in a hurry, and it was terrifying for them.
So who was taking pictures and posting them on Instagram? Because I was seeing those.
Yeah, that was my son.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was wondering, why are you still there?
Yeah, he's young enough he can still drive and videotape at the same time and panic.
Okay. So did any parts of your vineyards get damaged by the fire?
Yes, we ended up being quite fortunate in the end. We had fire. I own 180 acres altogether, 130 of which is forest, which literally had not burned since Abraham Lincoln was president. So fire on Spring Mountain, something that's been in the back of my mind, is a primal concern. So when this got unleashed, I thought the worst would happen. And by the grace of God, every building on my property survived. We lost fence lines. We lost retaining walls. We had culverts under the ground melt. We had our Wi-Fi repeating station melt down. We lost, irrigation pipes or tubing, and maybe one row of Zinfandel. So at the end of the day, the damage was peripheral, extensive, but not catastrophic.
So the fire came onto the property, but it sounds like it was sort of zigzagging or inexact, or I don't really understand.
It's really hard to describe. It was on and through our property for 5 straight days until it was finally defeated and exhausted and left. It was the most terrifying thing any of us have ever gone through.
Unbelievable.
It really was like it was like an uncaged, terrifying animal that would attack recede into the creek. You could hear it growling from a distance,
Ugh.
and then it would come up a different flank and attack from a different angle. It was just unbelievable.
Wow. We just got all the smoke down here, but you were in my thoughts because I kept looking at the map like, oh, it's up there on Spring Mountain.
At one point, we were the one little dot in this giant sea of red on a couple of maps, and we got numerous, phone calls, emails, texts from friends all over the country who were looking at those same maps that we all were looking at going, you're in this little teeny dot. And then on Thursday, it just disappeared. It's because the fire went all through our property. I mean, all around us. It came to within 30 feet of the back of the winery, right where the 1,000-gallon propane tank is, from two different directions at the same time. And they met at this little point right where the creek runs by the back of the winery. And it's just unbelievable.
They left the propane tank alone then, I take it.
It did. Yes.
Wow. So things look a lot different. The drive to Spring Mountain now is...
Yeah. And especially the drive from our place down to Santa Rosa is even worse, if you can imagine that.
Okay.
It's almost total devastation on the Sonoma side.
Pretty much like a nuclear landscape,
yeah.
I'm guessing. I remember driving through northern Santa Rosa a few years after those big fires in 2017.
Right, the wine country fires.
Just amazingly devastating, the look of everything.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Well, that fire started, the Calistoga fire started directly to our north. And that night, that was October 8th, also a Sunday.
Okay.
The winds were coming just from the east of dead north. So it blew that fire just to our western flank and down the petrified forest into Santa Rosa. If the winds had been 10 degrees more to the west or to dead north, it would have come straight down the Mayacamas Mountains and we would have been toast. But again, we just got lucky by 5 to 10 degrees of wind angle.
I hate to use this phrase, and people use it all the time, the new normal. But we were talking before we started recording about the rainfall because it's a rainy day here, and we're both thinking, okay, a little bit of rain, but it's not very much.
No, it's drizzling right now.
And you said last year was the driest year?
Yeah, we've been on Spring Mountain since 1974 and probably keeping records since 1977 of annual rainfall. And last year, 2020, was our driest season on record.
Okay, then. But you're still able to make wine.
Oh, yes.
And Keenan Winery, I will tell you this. They make the big reds. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. There's some Zinfandel up there. There's some Cabernet Franc up there. Mm-hmm. There's a little Syrah up there, yes?
No, we actually buy that from...
Oh, you buy the Syrah?
Coombsville,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good place to be buying it from.
I think it's the top appellation. Now it's raining, actually. Now it's coming down.
Tell me about the basic... Like I say, they make the big reds. How do you describe your wines to people when you meet them and they don't know?
Well, it's an oversimplification. I mean, we're a mountain setting, so in the mountain settings, wines generally are bigger, more powerful, darker, higher tannin content. But I think what we've really learned in 40 plus years of farming and winemaking is how to add the finesse to wines that have big bones.
Okay.
So these are wines that have great structure but incredible polish, which is something I'm extraordinarily proud of. Because when Dad first started working the land back in the 70s, his goal was to be, a first growth left bank estate. So Cabernet Sauvignon was the focus. The mountains were the place where you're going to make the wines that really would have profound structure, power, longevity. And then he thought in any way he could, he would add stress or maximize stress to the equation to make these great wines. And I think we've discovered over the years that what we need to do is not maximize stress in the vineyards, but actually maximize soil health. And we've really come much more into balance in the last 20 years as far as getting the tannins nice and polished, bringing out the perfume, the finesse to add to the underlying sense of power that will always be there from a mountain setting.
I try and explain this to people, and I say, well, you're up in the mountains, so all the water runs down the hill. You're up higher, so it's colder at night. What other factors are there about being up there that make the farming and then make the end product, the fruit, and then the wine so much different?
Well, a number of things. Number one, it's the angle of the sun. So we face east. So we get that first light in the morning in the summertime or during the growing season. We're above the fog level, which usually tops out around 1,200 feet, and we're at 1,700 to 2,000 feet. So we actually get more degree days of sun over the course of a year while being cooler, which is just the absolute blessing to get physiological ripeness with higher acidity, which is just God's gift to making great wine.
That sounds like ideal thing to me. Like, hey, it's a nice sunny day, but it's not too hot.
Exactly.
Because that's what you get in the summertime here in California. You get, oh, it's sunny, it's beautiful. And then at some point, oh my God, it's hot.
It's hot.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then at the end of the day, when the sun's in the west, the rays are almost parallel with the ground. So it's a less intense afternoon sun. And then as opposed to being on the Howell mountainside where your vineyards are angled towards the west, you get more of a beating component of the sun at the end of the day. And
it's a warmer part of the day, and it's warmer.
Yeah, it's hot.
So you are cooling down when a lot of the other areas are just at their apex of heat.
Just starting to heat up.
Okay. I love this information. All right, you talked about your dad. I had this as my next thing to talk about. The winery used to be known as Robert Keenan Winery, and that is Michael's father. And so he bought the property. He was already a wine lover?
Yes.
Okay, tell me exactly how that happened.
Well, it's really interesting. So I was thinking about this today.
Because this is the 1970s, right?
It was the 70s. Okay. Yeah. My family, my dad's family are Irish Catholics from Northern Ireland, and my mom's family are Irish Protestants from Ireland. And it's funny, they're historically from two different opposing camps. My mom's family historically had been wealthier for longer. They were part of the aristocracy, the blue bloods, so to speak, more aligned with the English crown, the feudal system of Ireland back in the day.
That's fancy.
Yeah. And dad's family were the dirt poor Catholic peasants in the north being oppressed by the Protestants and the English.
Just eating the potatoes. And
if they could find them.
Okay.
And in 1870, things were pretty tough. And that's when my great-grandfather came from Ireland as a teenager, dirt poor, came to San Francisco, became a builder, and became very successful, had 5 sons, 3 daughters, gave all of his money to his 3 daughters in the form of dowries, which was traditional back in those days.
Right, so they could attract a good husband.
Yes. And then the sons all got into construction, real estate, all became very successful. So Dad grew up in what I call a working class, wealthy Irish family, where his dad owned apartment buildings, was doing really well, but he'd never seen a bottle of wine in his life. Okay. So when he married my mom, a debutante socialite from the peninsula, from this blue blood Protestant Irish family.
Where was she from?
She was born in San Francisco, but she grew up in Hillsborough.
Okay.
Dad married her and was suddenly part of a family that drank the greatest wines in the world on a regular basis. And I think Dad had this sort of paranoid aspect.
How did that happen? How did they let that happen?
Exactly. The black Irish in the family? What are you talking about? And Dad's father-in-law, my maternal grandfather, was a really nice guy. He mentored my father into the wine space and got him into the Chevalier de Tesfont Society and got him buying, these Grand Cru Burgundies and top flight Bordeaux's. And Dad really got into it. And part of this was for him to blend into this new level of society, part of the country club set. And then he thought when we were growing up as kids, we should learn about wine at a much younger age than he did. So I don't really remember my first glass of wine. It just was part of family dining culture.
That's very old world, very European.
Yeah.
It's at the table. The kids have a little watered down wine.
Yeah, exactly. He never watered it down because he didn't want to mess with it because he was so proud of, the chateau. And he would pour us, literally about this much, teeny, an ounce.
Okay.
And he would, give us a quick lecture about this chateau and why it was great and everything.
How old were you, approximately how old were you when you really remember any of that?
It's that period of my life I don't remember any specific moment like when he talked about, Chateau Latour or Margaux. It just was a continuum of this is normal family life. And you kind of have to pay attention. You don't, where it kind of struck me was when I was 18, I remember going out to dinner with a couple other families and kids. And I was the only one who could read the wine list because all these names were familiar to me. And I thought, doesn't everybody know about Bordeaux and Burgundy? This is like secondhand. There's,
This Michael Keenan, he's a little bit of a drinker, I guess.
Well, it just was always there.
All right. So your dad married into a wealthy family, and he was not from a non-wealthy family.
Well, although they were doing quite well financially,
Right.
they just didn't have
They weren't
the
fancy.
history of class that my mom's family had. Yeah.
And then what did he do for work?
He was in real estate as well, commercial real estate.
At what point did he say, I need to plant the vineyard?
Well, I think it was after 20 years of collecting these wines, right about 1974. He'd probably heard that things were beginning to happen in Napa, and a couple of his friends were buying vineyards in Napa. And he thought, I want to get in on this angle from the side of a producer and compete in making potentially some of the greatest wines in the world. And he got all fired up about it. I remember him, this is ironically about 6 months after he divorced my mom, but he would still come down to dinner with us almost once a month. And it was almost as if we were a normal family, and it was kind of confusing. But
wait, your dad and mom divorced, but he would come have
dinner. Well,
that's
it's
good
funny
for the
because
kids.
I think my grandparents invented the term the California divorce, which is you split up and then you become best buddies. So when I grew up, I had 6 grandparents. I had my dad's 2 parents that never divorced.
Right.
Then on my mom's side, it was a foursome, an inseparable 2 couples that were made up of my maternal grandmother and her second husband and my maternal grandfather and his second wife. And they were just an inseparable foursome. It was a little confusing. Finally figured it out.
Sure.
I thought they'd swapped at one point, but they didn't.
Well, it was the 70s.
This is the 60s now we're going back to as far as the memory of.
Well, even better.
Yeah.
The 60s.
Right. So
Summer
same
of
thing
love.
happened when mom and dad divorced. All of a sudden the tension was gone and they became good friends again.
Okay.
And so dad told us one night at dinner about 6 months after the divorce that he was looking for property. He wanted to, or he'd found property and he was going to buy it and he was going to build a winery, establish an estate vineyard that he thought he could make these great wines at and be able to build this up and pass it down, through the history of the family.
And that is happening right now.
That is happening right now.
Because your kids are now working with you.
My son, who is 31 years old, is working for me right now.
That's awesome. And your daughter, was she involved for a while?
Both kids worked there as teenagers off
Okay.
and on, did stints. I remember looking at my daughter's LinkedIn profile one day when she asked to, whatever it's called, meet up on LinkedIn or whatever. And I checked out her.
She reached out to you, Michael.
Professionally.
That's what all the
on
kids
LinkedIn.
do. I'll reach out to you.
And I looked at her page and I thought, oh, operations manager at the Robert Keenan Winery. That's interesting.
She might have been patting it just a little bit there.
Just a bit.
Does that really happen on LinkedIn?
But she's a
Maybe.
doctor now, living in Denver. Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Did she went off to medical school?
Mm-hmm.
That's good because you have to do that
She did.
if you want to be a doctor.
She did. She's a real doctor.
What kind of real doctor is she?
She's a pediatrician. Something almost came out that would have been quite wrong, but you would have had to edit that out. But she's a pediatrician.
There are no wrong answers on the Tall Mike Wine podcast. As long as it's humorous and entertaining, I'm okay with it.
And she's loving Denver. She's going skiing every weekend and just having a great time.
She's a pediatrician in Denver.
Yeah.
Very nice. And your son is there at the winery.
Mm-hmm.
So he does the Instagram stuff.
He does. Yeah.
Okay. So now you're into the 3rd generation.
Yes, we are.
Now, you didn't immediately work at the winery in any major capacity like you are now. Now you're the president. But before you were the president, you were doing other things. You probably worked there as a teenager.
I did. I worked there for the first harvest, 1977. As sort of a fallback, I was looking for a job in the ornithological field, which was a big interest of mine in high school. And I just come back from a year abroad. I took the year off after high school.
Okay.
Delayed going to college. Still haven't gone, actually.
Me neither. But look
so-
at us. Top of the world.
So I came back from my year abroad, and after looking for a job in the ornithological field, which only
That's birds, right?
Yes, but
Okay.
only volunteer positions were open. And Dad said, well, why don't you come up to Napa and work for me? The harvest is going to start. And you just take it from there. And I went, okay. And the irony of this story is that at that time in my life, I'd stopped drinking because the last part of my journey going around the world was India. And I'd met a guru there, which was kind of the goal of the trip to begin with.
Okay.
And I'd become a vegetarian and a teetotaler at the age of 19.
My goodness.
So the job, I loved the job at the winery, but I knew there was no future in it for me. Plus, I didn't really want to be around my dad. We weren't getting along that well.
Okay.
And as we were doing the first harvest, the 100-year-old building was being restored by a general contractor. So I ended up asking him for a job because I started working for him on the weekends and at night and on days when there was nothing else to do. And I loved the work and thought, well, this has got a future. Asked him for a job. He gave me a job. Had to move out to the Sea Ranch where most of his work was. A guy named Matt Sylvia.
Was he building the Sea Ranch then?
He was one of the two main contractors at that time. Baker and Sylvia were the two big contractors building all the homes at the Sea Ranch at the time.
That's a whole another podcast talking about the Sea Ranch.
That's an amazing piece of the world.
So that's a good thing for you to Google Sea Ranch, California coast.
Well, just one quick note. It's one of the most amazing developments I think I've ever heard of because it was planned in the 50s and it was planned to be a multi-decade process to be able to keep a very small community of builders and architects busy for decades, which is a really cool way to look at doing a project. It's not just get in there, bulldoze everything, build it all up, make a bunch of money, sell it all, and then leave. Then there's no more jobs building. They really planned this out in a really amazingly
that word
thoughtful
planned,
way.
It's definitely a planned housing development.
Yeah.
It's much, much more than that. It's all about the ethos of the times and the architecture. It's pretty amazing. I didn't know anything about it. And then I went up there near there about a year and a half ago, just on a little vacation to the coast and did a lot of walking around and reading about it. And it was quite fascinating.
Yeah. And it's stunningly beautiful as well.
Yeah. Well, California coast.
Yeah.
How can you not love it?
Yeah.
Can we talk about wine now?
Sure.
How do you like this Pinot?
It's delightful. As I said earlier, it smells like Pinot, which is quite a compliment for me.
We have been sipping the Nicholson Ranch 2016 Cactus Hill Pinot Noir. That's our reserve Pinot here. Comes from a little part of the vineyard that's over in that direction. Now I'm ready to taste what you have brought.
All right. Let's do it.
Michael has brought a Merlot. This is the 2016 Mailbox Vineyard, Spring Mountain District, Napa Valley. And it says reserve on there. Yep, it does. Okay, I'm just trying to read everything that's on the label.
This is our top Merlot, a single vineyard from about a 3-acre parcel that actually faces northwest. And it's double planted, which I'm not even sure why they did that. They did that in 1997.
What do you mean double planted? Explain that.
The rows are this far apart.
Oh.
And then there's a normal avenue, and then there's 2 more rows.
Oh. I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's pretty rare.
Okay.
And none of us really know why they did it. None of us were really around at that time.
This is your dad that did this.
Yeah.
So it was most likely inspired by something. He had seen in France.
God knows where.
I've not been up to that part of the vineyard, I guess.
But it's working.
Okay, great.
I've been
to your winery numerous times.
Yeah, I've been making this bottling since 2003, and that was the 7th leaf for the vineyard, and that was the year that all of a sudden this terroir note emerged for the first time, this sort of spicy, earthy, almost mole spice-like note that you get in the nose. You can also taste a little bit on the palate now, and I can taste it in the fruit now.
There's definitely a spice on the nose, but I go right to like bell pepper. But it's much more refined than that.
Yeah, and there's also a floral note. I mean, to me, one of the signs of a great wine is when you first smell it, you get an array of smells, and then you spin your glass, and then you get another array of smells, and then you go from perfume to pyrazine, and then you go to a blend of the two. And that to me is a sign of a balanced wine, when you get that everything shows and molds together as time goes by with that same glass, and almost every smell seems different.
It's delicious.
Yeah, it's really tasty.
Thank you so much for sharing. What is the total production nowadays at Keenan?
Well, it does vary quite a lot depending on the year, but I'd say our average is between 13 and 14,000 cases.
And during the pandemic, when you couldn't have visitors at the winery, and I know you send a lot of your wines out because that's how we met, to restaurants. When I was managing the wine program at a restaurant in Walnut Creek, California, my sales rep for Michael's distributor brought him in one day. And I tasted his wines for the first time, and they were delicious. And I put some on my wine list. So restaurants shut down. Does that must really change the dynamic? I mean, are your distributors telling you what's going on? Like, we're moving as much wine as we can from restaurants to wine shops, retail. Because, the restaurants are shut down, but people are drinking more. So the wine shops, the grocery stores, Loving that. Is that kind of what's happening with your wine?
Yeah, although we do try to stay out of grocery store per se as an outlet, but
I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
say grocery store.
I've been, I owned a construction company with a partner for about 20 years, and I've been running the winery for about 20 years. I've never seen a shock to my basic business plan like what happened last March, whatever it was, the 19th, when the curtain came down and we were all shut down. I've never seen a sudden shock that changed my business so quickly in my whole career. And it took me about 10 days of feeling sorry for myself to finally kind of shake it off and come up with a plan. And then because of my experience dealing with different vendors and different outlets over the years, I realized that the best plan for us moving forward was basically to fend for ourselves.
Okay.
Not depend upon any outlet other than our own.
Okay.
Because I knew that, as you said, everything was being transferred to retail and flash sale sites. And the line to get in the door to give your offer to these people was getting longer and longer.
And do you want to do that? Some of those options are like, well, that's an option, but I don't know about that option.
Well, the answer was no, I didn't. But I had to make up for, we always focused heavily on restaurants through our distribution channel. Thankfully, we've always had a pretty good direct-to-consumer channel. We've got a very successful tasting room, great wine club. But we make, 14,000 cases of wine is a lot of wine. And restaurants are a big part of that. So I just took what I learned from basically flash site operations and just did it myself and offered case discounts. You mentioned you were doing the same thing here. Case discounts to my mailing list.
Right.
And gave the best breaks to our wine club members and then lured more people into the wine club by them seeing what these deals were if you're a wine club member. And it worked. We moved a tremendous amount of wine directly in April and May and June of last year.
That's pretty much what happened here at Nicholson Ranch. We put the wines on sale by the case first to the wine club. And think about it. You've got all these people now that are stuck at home. They need something to sip on between Zoom meetings. And you are their savior.
Yes.
How about some wine?
Well, to me,
on sale.
Yeah. On top of that, one of the delicious ironies that we experienced was that prior to COVID, in the marketing jargon that's going around, I pay attention to the stuff and try to learn something from these marketing experts.
I'm tired of the word pivot.
But I attend sales, meetings and stuff to learn about what people are doing. And the buzz for a number of years has been, we have to cater to the millennials because they're the up and coming, tranche. And that always just made my skin crawl. I thought, my God, that's why so many millennials are kind of messed up. They've been catered to all their life. Get the trophy for showing up kind of mentality. It just rubbed me the wrong way. But one of the great victories for us, without me intentionally thinking about it, was everyone's home, eating dinner at home night after night. And a lot of my friends who are my age and maybe a little bit younger, they have their kids home for the first time because they're in college. They came home because college is now virtual.
We had one come home.
So all of a sudden, these young kids are at the dinner table with their parents on a regular basis that they haven't done since they were 10. And what's sitting on the table with that lovely roast that they made for dinner? A bottle of Keenan Cab that they bought by the case.
Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things about when you buy wine by the case, you're actually more inclined to drink it.
Right.
If you buy one reserve bottle of Keenan Cab when you come to the winery, maybe a couple bottles of Chardonnay, bottle is in.
Then you hang on to it. It's like, well, that's our special occasion.
Yeah, that's going to be Christmas like next year. But if you get that case of reserve Cab on a great discount by the case, you're like, hey, let's open one up.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, these millennials are at the table drinking this going, this is really good. So we made inroads into the millennial tranche without even really trying.
This is the future.
Yes.
This pandemic came along right at the right time.
Yes.
It's the future.
So we saw a lot of growth in our wine club during COVID, and a lot of young new members that were kids of our regular members have joined the wine club, which is great.
That's really a great angle. I like that a lot. We had one come home from college all the way out in Maine, came back to California. He still doesn't really want to drink wine. He wants to smoke the weed, though. All right, let's lighten the mood just a little bit here. Let's talk about dogs. I visited Keenan numerous times. You've been a very generous host. Did you cook steaks for everybody one day when I came?
Perhaps it does happen on a regular / ritualistic basis, depending on
you're kind of the main,
the day.
You're kind of the main cook, right?
Mhm.
When it's time to have like, oh, let's bring some people in and have a big lunch. You're kind of the main guy.
Yeah, although that's changed a little bit since COVID began because it's become a much more shared thing, which is great. I mean, Matt, my general manager, is an incredible cook, and he's been cooking more.
Good job, Matt.
Yeah, his wife has helped. Laura's cooked more, and my son's really gotten into it. Big
Laura,
time.
tasting room manager.
Yeah, and my son's really got into it as well.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of meals made together, meals made by other people. So it's been a wonderful. The culinary growth of the staff has been wonderful.
I just remember there were steaks. Some of them were grass-fed. Some of them were traditional. And it was somewhat of a like steak-off.
We've done that a couple times.
Okay. And then there was some sort of spice rub you were using on the steaks that was very subtle. Is that a secret?
No, it's a classic Indian curry.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that now. But just a little bit.
Yeah, put it on the cutting board.
Just a sprinkle.
Let the steaks rest on them, flip them over, pick up a little spice.
Oh, okay, cool. Back to the dogs. There were, and just so you know, we're on trend here. I started formulating this question the other night when I was writing my notes, and then I went out the next morning to the mailbox, and the Wine Spectator was there. And this month's issue is a big, splashy, fluffy spread about winery dogs.
Mm.
So we're right on trend. But I was just thinking about the dogs. I know there was a dog named Scrappy at the winery.
Scrappy's no longer with us.
No, I knew that. Yeah. I knew that. But you've had some great dogs. But now I think I see on social media that there's a pig.
Yes, my wife has a pig.
Okay.
Named Billy.
Jennifer, Michael's wife, has a pig.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the pig.
Actually, his official name is, I think it's Little Billy Rumpus O'Doul Jr. is his full name.
Let's say that again.
It's Little Billy Rumpus O'Doul Jr.
He's a junior?
Yeah.
There's another Willie O'Doul Rumpus?
Not with us. No, we just have the one.
Oh.
It was kind of a rescue from a present that her cousin had given her other cousin that didn't work out. So Jennifer took it upon herself to bring the pig home and give it a proper home.
This is is it a specific breed of pig?
It's a miniature pig. So it's a very small pig as far as pigs go. It's about 30 pounds.
That's pretty small for a pig.
Yeah, it is. It's a small pig.
This is as big as it's going to get?
Yeah, it hasn't really grown much.
So
thankfully.
Tell me how it is having a pig as a pet.
Yeah, I sort of take it.
Do you want to compare it to a dog or a cat?
Well, it doesn't fetch. It's not really fun to pet. The hair is really wiry. The face is a little unfortunate as far as I'm concerned.
Sorry, Jennifer.
It actually shocks me whenever we take the pig for a walk that the universal reaction from everybody is, oh my God, that's so cute. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with people? Just think it's a pig. It's ugly.
But it's little.
Oh my God.
Anything you make smaller than normal, it's going to be cute.
Yeah. I found that everything I'd heard about pigs is true. It grunts like a pig, snorts like a pig, eats like a pig, looks like a pig.
Then it's a pig.
It's a pig, yeah. But he's kind of growing on me. He's cute. And he's always busy, looking for food.
Okay. Does he stay outside most of the time?
He does. We've got a little fenced-in pig run for him in the yard.
Very nice.
So he hangs out there, grubbing for acorns or whatever he's looking for.
Has he dug up any truffles for you yet?
No, has not found any truffles. No.
That'd be nice.
It would be.
Tell me, this happens to me on a regular basis here at Nicholson Ranch. People come in. They're not from here. They say, we're going to go here and here and here and here. And then tomorrow we have a few openings. Where should we go? And there's a certain expectation among some people that the other wineries in the area are our rivals. And I have to explain to people, no. We're all on Team Wine here in wine country.
Yeah.
I might not love the wines they make at a certain winery down the street, but that doesn't mean you won't love them. So I'm going to send you there. So there's certain places I send people when I'm here. One of the places I send people, if they're saying, oh, tomorrow we're going to be in Napa and we have this time, I say, you have to go up Spring Mountain and you have to visit Michael Keenan or Laura at Keenan.
Oh, thank you.
Who do you send people to in your neighborhood? Who do you like?
Pretty much to all the neighbors. except for Philip Tunney, who doesn't want to see people. So he's the crusty old man on the mountain.
Oh, Philip,
Yeah.
loosen up.
He's got a very defined philosophy. He believes the wine should go to the people should not go to the wine.
Oh, so there's no tasting room.
He kind of invented the old "get off my lawn," sort of
Is he out
vibe.
there? Is he out there in his lawn chair shaking his fist?
Exactly.
Oh, get off my lawn!
Get out of here. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had his wines. I do know of them. I think they're expensive.
Not by Napa standards.
No?
I wouldn't
Okay.
say so. No.
All right. Well, hey, if his wines aren't that expensive, then I got to give him credit. So who do you like up on Spring Mountain? Who's your go-to? If you have somebody that says, we have a one slot tomorrow, where's the best place to go?
We often advise people to go to Domaine Charbet, since it's such a unique experience.
They make the spirits.
And they make spirits, they make dessert wines, and they do make a wine now as well.
Okay.
But it's such an out-of-the-box experience and such a change-up from, drinking wine.
Right.
So they're one of our favorites. We send people to, Pride, to Schweiger, to Barnett. Can't send them to Kane. Kane's another one of those. Well, Kane also burned down, so that's
that's
unfortunate.
sad.
But they were kind of anti-visitor, too, which really kind of
Were they?
blew my mind that
I
one of
only
the prettiest properties on the
beautiful.
mountain, and they discouraged visitors.
I went to the property once. I was invited there for a beautiful lunch. It was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's just the way it is. Some places are like, no, we have other people who buy our wine. We don't need people coming to our property.
Right. And Smith Madrone, another one of our direct neighbors.
That's Stuart
and Charles.
and Charles.
Yeah.
They're another winery that's been there since the early days, right?
Yeah, I think they bought their property like the year after Dad bought his, or 2 years. They've been there for a long time.
Life is good on Spring Mountain, isn't it?
It is.
I will come see you again
Good.
sometime soon. Thanks for coming to see me
My pleasure.
on the podcast. The Tall Mike Wine Podcast was conceived and is written, edited, produced, and maintained by yours truly. Our theme song was written by Jeremy Marzin. We record on a program called Audacity, and we do that here from the Vintners Room at Nicholson Ranch Winery in Sonoma. Come see us. We're open again. Go see Michael Keenan. He's open again. Outdoor tastings only. And if it's raining, you're screwed. Sorry. Do you? Is it a nice tent?
We have a lovely tent. We have heaters, too. I didn't see any heaters on your patio.
We don't have any heaters. We have some tents. We're only going to use them if we have to.
Yeah.
But we might have to do that this Saturday, actually, because it's supposed to rain in the morning. All right. Thanks for finding the podcast. Look for episode 5 soon. Good night, Squim. For now, cheers from the Vintners Room.